Hello and welcome to Researching Tuscan Ancestors. My name is Julie Goucher. I'm half Sicilian and half English, and I've been researching my family history since the late 1980s. I joined the Guild of World Name Studies in 2002 and registered my Italian surname of Orlando, which ironically doesn't seem to have much of a foothold in Tuscany. You will see highlighted at the bottom in that circle there is my email address and my website. There is a handout that will accompany today's session, and you're able to download the handout from my website on the genealogy drop down menu. You will also find this in the Facebook group that accompanies this event. So 1861 is when Italy as we know it began. But before we begin the session in earnest, let's just take a little step back. So just 5 years before Italy began, this is how Italy looked. And from a visual perspective, there is nothing that looks different from what we recognise Italy in the 21st century. But what is different is the names of the regions across Italy. The Grand Duchy of Tuscany was an Italian monarchy that existed with some interruptions, but essentially went from 1569 to 1816, replacing the Republic of Florence, and the Grand Duchy's capital was Florence. The overview of this session, and in fact anything else in terms of researching in Europe, is you're going to focus on your people in their time and their place. And these 6 key questions are really important to you understand your basic knowledge and understanding of Italy, your Italian ancestry, and how they were impacted by the fundamentals of society, social, economical and political, and how that played into the religious aspect of society. Where did our ancestors come from? What was the name of the town? Which region is that found in? And is there more than one place with the same name? So Tuscany is in modern times a well-known and frequented holiday destination. This slide features the region of Tuscany as it was in the 16th century, and the map is from a collection at the University of Texas. The second map is from Wikipedia and is just identifying where the region sits within a modern map of Italy. This map is from Google Maps and clearly marks with the dots the boundaries of the province, and that includes several of the islands off the Tuscan coast. This map is showing you the actual regions within Tuscany. Why am I showing you this? This is really important because in Italy there is no central registration. So you need to know exactly where your ancestors came from. Not just the region, the actual town in whatever province within Tuscany itself, and the same is across the whole of Italy. So that's really quite important. So the second research tip is looking at languages in Tuscany. So languages in Italy are heavily influenced by dialects, and there are 25 languages spoken in Italy, with 11 of them recognised countrywide. When Italy unified in 1861, there was a population of about 25 million people, with a mere 2.5% of them speaking what we identify as Italians. And records are found in 2 languages. Italian for civil registration documents, so births, marriages and deaths. And when we say Italian, we really mean the language we know as Italian, which is heavily influenced and whose origins are Tuscan. You will also find Latin for church events such as baptisms, marriages and burials. The school system teaches Italian, but that might not be what the family speak at home. So it's quite important to understand the languages and how that slots in to your general research. So research tip 3. Ethnology is social science, and it incorporates things that we identify as what makes us Italian, effectively. Our ancestors did not live isolated from the social, economic and political elements of their society. And whilst we need to expand our genealogical data using vital records and other documentary evidence, we also need to understand the context of those events. So to kick off researching in Tuscany, we're going to explore, amongst others, some of the facets of ethnology. What are the customs in your region? Not just Tuscany, but within your town. What clothes were worn? Was there a national dress? What is the religion? Now, it's probably Roman Catholic, but did your ancestors follow the practices of Roman Catholic? Foods and cuisine, music and language. It is not just what defines us as Italians, say from the French or the British, but what defines us as individuals whose heritage is from a particular region. So, symbols are identification, and we likely feel aligned to representations such as organisations, countries, clubs, allegiances. So here is just 2 examples. So the first is obviously is the flag from Flags of the World website, and that gives you it's the flag of effectively Tuscany. And then the second picture there is the national costume, and that picture is in my personal collection. So genealogical nuts and bolts. So not all the material is to be found in archives, and not all material will be found online. And some of these sites are detailed on this slide, and some of these are specific to Tuscany. Again, it's on the handout that accompanies this presentation. And here is a list of some other geological resources, and this is much more general in terms of research, but it is worth pointing out that the top link there has, over the last 5 years, has managed to place online a significant amount of Italian records. When I think back to when I first started, how hard it was to research Italian material, and it's still difficult, but it is so much easier now. And we come across some of the other of the sites mentioned a little bit later on the slide, but I will just draw your attention to the very bottom one, which is the German War Dead, which does include some Italians, and Jewish Gen, which might not necessarily on the face of it think there will be any Italians in there, but there are some Italians in there that were held in various camps during the Second World War. So migration prior to 1870 was typically from the north of Italy, and then migration post 1890 was typically from the south. Migration might not necessarily appear in a straight line. Italians frequently migrated into the UK and other European countries. There's also a significant presence in South America and of course the United States, and then further afield to places like Australia. Many Italians returned home to enlist in the First World War, and there was a series of books which were created in the early 1920s and includes those that perished in the war. The books are known as the Golden Books. They're available online, access is free, and the link is in the handout. I did do a quick search with no surname, but just filtering for the Tuscan region. There was a particular volume for Tuscany, and there was more than 46,000 names. You can use the translate function in Chrome, and you will need to toggle between English and Italian because some of the translations are a little odd. So just remember to just toggle between the two. Parish records are in addition to civil registration, and these predate 1861. As I said earlier, there is no central registration process across Italy, and these did not begin until 1861. Language, Latin is used in church records. Italian, as I said, is used for registration records and other forms of records, so taxation, for example. But you might also find records that are written in French or Austrian if the place where you are researching borders France, Switzerland or Austria. Also be aware that you may find records that are faded or written in dialect. And prior to 1810, records were completely handwritten. That means there was no pre-structured books. Everything was handwritten. So you will find that there will be variations to what the priest wrote in what was recorded. So names and surnames. Prefixes may have been added or removed. Long surnames may have been shortened. Surnames may have been anglicised. Despite popular belief, names were not changed by officials at Ellis Island or other migration centres. Names were recorded as they were heard, which means that names may well have been recorded differently to how they were spelt. So it's not intentional, but as a result of accents and surnames that perhaps were not familiar to the officials. Local dialects can influence the spelling or pronunciation of a surname, and you will often find that many men have the middle name of Maria. Women retain their maiden name after marriage, though those that migrated may be found under both names. The image on the screen there for the Our Italian Surnames book is certainly a recommended bit of reading. My copy is from 2002, but a much earlier edition from 1949 is available online to download. The link is on the handout, and if anyone has problems finding it, if you just drop me an email, I will be able to send you the PDF of it. Surname distribution. Again, there is a link on the handout, and it's not an exact science, but search for your surname and see which region the surname is prevalent in. The site in question is called gens.info, and as I said, it is on the handout. That brings me to a close. If you want to learn more, I frequently teach European or Italian ancestors in both presentations and lectures as part of the wider European Ancestors course, which can be found on the Parish Tutors website. There is a link from my own site and within the handout. And if you do have any questions, please just drop me an email. I hope that you have found this session useful as a little taster to researching in Tuscany. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye bye for now.